Conor McReynolds, and welcome to the dinner party. In this podcast, I ask guests to tell me about their dream dinner parties. I want to hear all about the venue, the menu, and the guest list. I love nothing more than chatting to brilliant creative people, all about the people who have shaped them and influenced their work. And that's exactly what this podcast is about. And this week, I am thrilled to be speaking to my wonderful friend, local legend, Chelsea Birkby. Chelsea is a phenomenal stand-up comedian. She's been a finalist in some of the biggest comedy competitions in the country. She's a regular host and performer at Jericho Comedy, and she's just one of my absolute favourite acts. She has put together quite the fascinating dinner party. So without further ado, here is the dream dinner party of the amazing Chelsea Birkby. Chelsea Birkby, thank you so much for joining me on the dinner party. How are you?
Conor McReynolds, I'm great. Thank you. Thanks for having me on the dinner party.
Oh, well, thank you so much for taking the time, Chelsea. I'm so excited to speak to you. It's been a little while. I mean, I'm used to, in normal times, seeing you regularly at gigs and that kind of thing, but 2020 has taken you away from me.
Yes, I've been banned from gigs after what I was going to say after what I did. And
After the unpleasantness, yeah.
Yeah, we did. Although we did gig together just before the last lockdown, so you're still one of the most recent people I've gigged with.
Yes, that's true, and you're absolutely the most recent because, as you well know, I am nowhere near as prolific with gigging as you are. I mean, how have you been filling the time this year, Chelsea, without regular gigs? What have you been getting up to?
I have just. Oh my god! Okay, just like everybody else, I started Couch to 5K in this most recent lockdown.
Oh yeah.
And I've been really enjoying it. And I know, like, I don't know who I am anymore, but I've been really enjoying it.
It's a really good program. I mean, I'm a very big guy, but even I was about to claim to have completed it, but I actually stopped on the last 30-minute run. I don't know why, like psychologically, I was like,
What?
if I do this, I'll have to call myself a runner. So I just never completed the last run, but I effectively completed it. It's a really good program.
It's really good. Who did you choose as your trainer?
Oh, I had Sarah Milliken.
Ah,
I needed to be called Pet at the end of every run. I just needed that because I have not, like you, found the joy in running.
I was gonna choose Sarah Milliken, but then I thought, like, what if one day I end up gigging with her and then I hear her voice and I'm just like, I don't want to fucking run, Sarah. Leave me alone.
That's such a good point. Who have you got talking you through it all?
So I went for Jo Wiley, and I'm not sure about her, to be honest, because right at the beginning, in the very first run, she's like, I know you feel like a couch potato now, and I was like, I don't feel like a couch potato.
Also, I would be very confused why she's not playing the latest track from Annie Lennox. Like, Jo, where's the music? Do you listen to music as well, Chelsea, when you're running?
Yes, I listen to music. So I used to run and I'd only listen to music. But these days I've started listening to podcasts in the background, and I used to think, how is that gonna, like, I need a fast beat, otherwise I'll just stop. But actually, I listened to a long podcast about loneliness while I was running, and I really enjoyed it.
Oh wow. It reminds me of the time that I was in a book club and I had to read The Plague by Albert Camus, and I was running out of time, so I was listening to the audiobook of it while in the gym on a treadmill, and it was like, what's the point? What's the point in anything?
That is bleak.
That was super bleak. Yeah, that was two of my least favorite things rolled into one. It was grim. How does listening to a podcast about loneliness affect your running? Does it perk you up, or?
I think it distracts me more than music does. Like, I don't realize, like, if I run for 3 minutes, then I know that's a song's worth, and the song ends, and I'm like, okay, well, I've done 3, so now I can take a break. Whereas with a podcast, you're not so aware of the passing of time.
Yes, that's true.
Maybe people are running listening to us right now.
Oh my goodness, how meta would this be? I feel like I should just randomly intersect with, like, you're doing great, Pet.
Yeah, keep up the good work.
Just in case. But if nobody's listening running, that's going to be very weird. But anyway, well, that's a wonderful thing to take up, Chels. That's really cool.
Thank you.
What week are you on now? Like how much
Well,
running to walking ratio are you up to?
I'm only on week 4, so that's just when it amps up a little bit.
Oh
Um,
yeah,
but I
is
used
that
to run. I actually do you know I actually ran the London Marathon one year, but really without
what?
enough training. Yeah, yep.
Oh my god!
um, I really had not trained enough. Like I was very ill that year mentally, and
Yeah,
yeah, just didn't do enough. But I did finish it, so
that
there we go.
is amazing. You have run 26 miles in one run. That's I just yeah. I will never understand how people can do that. Like I don't think the human body is built for that. But I think if I really set my mind to it, I could eat 26 tubes of Pringles in one sitting. Like I think that's what humans were built for.
Like all the same flavor, or
Now that's a question. I don't think I could tackle 26 salt and vinegar because that is an intense hit.
you wouldn't be able to eat anything. Like you wouldn't be able to taste for months.
No, your mouth would eventually just erode away. You would just have half a head. But I think if you threw in the occasional, ready salted just for a little break,
Yeah.
yeah, I like to think dream big, Connor. I think I could do that. That would be my marathon.
Do you know with Pringles that they make them all the same and then they spray on the flavor?
Oh my god, I
Yeah.
don't know how I feel about that.
I think it's
Spray flavor.
yep. Yep.
Flavor shouldn't be a spray, should it?
I
But
don't know,
then
but I
hold
want to
on.
know how to get hold of just that spray.
Oh my god, yeah, use it as air freshener. Your eyes would be burned in an instant, actually. That would be dreadful. Well, Charles, other than running, you've managed to find ways to keep up doing comedy and gigs this year. Obviously, with much far fewer actual live gigs, you performed a bit online. You did the sort of the Zoom gig kind of thing, but you also did the online comedian of the year competition, which you came runner up in. What?
Ah, thank you.
Which is
Yes, I did.
very cool. I wanted to ask you about that because it's you didn't just go on and perform a bit from one of your standard sets. Like you kind of wrote and tailored it to the actual format, which is it kind of sounds really obvious, but not everybody did do that.
Oh, thank you. Yes, I think that's why. Yeah, it was. I decided when I signed up, I was like, I told the guy I'm going to do something pioneering, but I hadn't thought of what that would be or how to do it. So then, like the night before the gig, like I live with Sarah Mann, a very funny comedian, and she's very good at
Yes.
tech stuff. And I was like, Sarah, can you help me be a pioneer? And so
Oh,
together
I
we just
chose the
played
wrong moment to take a sip of tea there. I nearly spat that out. I love that that was your ambition. And you did become a pioneer. Tell us what you did.
So I used this software called, actually, I'm not going to, no, I will tell you, it's called OBS. And
Okay.
um, it's like live video editing. So what I ended up doing is I did my set to camera on, on my webcam, but
Yeah.
kept changing the different functions. So how it appears. So either like text would appear or it would randomly like zoom in on my eyes or like lips or it was just really stupid. It was really lo-fi and it wasn't very technical at all, but it was just kind of mad. I really enjoyed it, but not everybody in the comments did. And there was this one girl that commented, she was like, I'm sorry, I work in tech and this makes no sense.
That's the highest compliment that could receive, surely.
I loved it.
So the difference between that online comedian of the year competition and a kind of standard Zoom gig. I mean, did you switch up what you did for Zoom gigs?
Yeah. Yep. So I wrote entire. I didn't do that many, but the ones I did, I always did this like live video editing kind of silliness. And then I wrote this set specifically with kind of cues as to when to use these different like filters on the.
Right.
Yep. So it was like choreographed kind of, which is not something I've ever had to do in my
Yeah.
usual stand up. Um, yeah, so I would choreograph different like images and filters to like work alongside the punchline, and I felt like it needed that because stand up is so like about connecting with people and in the room, and I don't use anything. Like I'm just a man and a mic. I keep it pure and raw. Um, but especially where I talk about mental illness stuff and laugh at my own jokes, which I feel is charming in real life. If you if you're doing that into a webcam in your room alone, I think it suddenly picks up a kind of unhinged air. So I thought, to solve this, let me add some tech in and make it look intentional.
And did it feel very different to do that? I mean, it must have interrupted your kind of usual rhythms and that kind of thing.
It did feel different in a way, but in real life, it's easy to get distracted. Like in real life gigs, it's easy to get distracted and talk about things. Whereas where this is much more like reading a script than stand up usually is, no, it just felt like its own thing. It felt more like, have you had any Zoom interviews this year for like day job stuff?
I have, yes.
Yep. It feels more like I was in a team meeting for not my work, for something outside of work. I was in a meeting. We were having a Zoom call, and
Hmm.
it just really threw me, because suddenly you feel like, oh, nobody's listening to me, because obviously nobody's making eye contact. Like, even if they are, they're looking at your eyes, but they're not looking. Your eyes aren't the
Yeah.
camera. And it just threw me, and I would keep ending sentences with, like, I realized I was just completely rambled and lost, much as I have now, and then I'd end with "in that regard" to try and make it seem sophisticated. Um, so, like, the good thing about I knew that would happen if I did that with if I tried to treat online stand up the same as a set in real life. I'd feel like people weren't listening and I was losing the room and I'd ramble. Whereas, so I had to switch to a more script like structure,
Mm.
and then using these like choreographed cues meant I did have to stick to the script in that order. So it did feel quite different. Yeah.
I mean, you're writing. You're one of my favorite writers, and I love the topics that you talk about and the way you talk about things on stage. You have this wonderful way of mixing pop culture with some fairly kind of highfalutin concepts like philosophy and literature. Like, what order do your ideas sort of? What order does your kind of process happen with? Do you start with a philosophical idea that you want to explore, and then retrospectively add kind of pop references to that? Or do you have a kind of area of pop culture that you're obsessed with and you find it easy to kind of apply philosophical concepts to that? Or indeed, does it work entirely differently to that?
Oh, thank you. That was really kind. And it's kind of not intentional. I think they're the things I'm obsessed with. I love philosophy and, I mean, concepts. That's a weird thing to say. And then also just pop culture, and largely pop culture from the noughties. Like, I feel like I didn't choose this, but these are just what I'm interested in, what I'm drawn towards. And then when I write, so I nearly always used to, when I first started writing stand up, is start with kind of an essay. Like, I'd think, what do I really care about? Like, what's my point of view on, say,
Hmm.
like anger? And then I'd write what my feelings about anger down are in like a completely joke-free way, and do more reading about it.
Mm.
And then the jokes come after. So then I'd be trying to explain a concept, and I'll explain it through jokes. And I feel like they go pretty hand in hand, because usually if you're confused about something, trying to explain something, that's quite similar to a joke that can explain something. Or I like to be quite confused in my jokes.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
so so I'll get lost, I'll get confused, and something weird, yeah, I'll struggle with an idea, and then I'll be like, oh, that's a joke, and that's how it ends up happening most of the time for
That
me.
is that's such an interesting way of doing it, and there must be so much brilliant like context. I mean, even as a writing exercise, um, one that I learned on a comedy course that I did was like if you write down as a sort of a setup, like a true piece of information, and then you come up with a punchline following it. I mean, your essay sort of format there, that essentially sounds like a page full of potential setups or things. That's a really rich way to really mine into a topic.
Yeah, that's what I find, because a premise of an argument is kind of like a premise of a joke. So you just write the argument into kind of its structure, but then add a punchline after each part. And I think some people are put off by this. Like, I live with a few comedians, and so I think some find it like too mechanical. But for me, it doesn't feel mechanical. I don't. It feels natural for me. Yeah,
Hmm.
it's just how I end up doing it.
It's
Um,
incredible. I think I'm going to be trying this because
yeah,
there's some areas that I've wanted to write on for a long time, but I've never gotten around to it. I've never really known the way in. But this feels like a really good way because just writing down everything you think on something that feels easy.
yeah. You just write statements, just statements about what you think, or statements about, or just facts, and then jokes come from that. I think I know for a long time. I think I know what you're talking about, and you've said for a long time, I want to joke about this, and I'm so excited for
Yeah.
when you do. I know it's going to be just excellent.
Oh my goodness. It's well, I mean, for the listener, because Chelsea, you are my favorite comedian who talks about mental health, and you've lived with mental health problems, and I have also lived with mental health issues, and you do so much kind of mental health work with wonderful Oxfordshire Mind. And yes, I look up to you and the way that you talk about that on stage just so much.
Thank you.
And yes, I really aspire to being able to talk about it a fraction as well as you do on stage, and as with as much humor as you do on stage. I mean, what you I've referenced kind of pop culture and philosophy and mental health, and these are all things that you do talk about on stage so brilliantly. But I'm really interested to know, like, what have you been thinking about recently with your writing? Has there been anything? Obviously, in lockdown, the whole world's kind of on pause. Has that made choosing topics easier or more difficult for you? Or, I mean, what have you been thinking about recently?
In the first lockdown, I felt like I couldn't write at all. I just felt like I had nothing to write about. I
Hmm.
think it was just such a confusing time. Um, but this second lockdown, or this second stage of coronavirus, like from the summer onwards, once gigs were back, I've been
Hmm.
writing a lot more. Sometimes about coronavirus, about lockdown, those kind of things. Um,
Hmm.
and I started, and I know this is going to sound like it's 2003, but I started a blog again, and I just called it Thoughts of the Week, and it's kind of like a diary. It's not how I write stand up at all, and actually, it's not
Hmm.
traditional joke structures. And I don't know if it's good or not, but I really enjoy doing it, and some people have said some nice things, and so I'll just write about like what happened that week, or what I've thought about, or what was funny, and that's completely an opposite way for me writing about, like, it's not like I was saying before, where it's concept first. What are my ideas?
Mm.
How do I flesh it out with jokes? It's just kind of disconnected thoughts, and that's been really. It's made me think that I would like to try and be a little more sincere, because I feel like I've had this constant tension between, I want to talk about, say, mental illness and my experience of mental illness, which I do, and I feel like I'm
Hmm.
quite honest about that, but obviously I'm trying to be funny about it, so there's always a joke at the end, which also I think is very important. That's what makes it stand up. But
Yeah, yeah.
I've been starting to worry, like, am I sacrificing some sincerity in order for I don't know, trying to get the balance right. And that's why I think, like, the way you talk about your experience with mental health and mental illness, with like your Movember work, and obviously with Oxfordshire Mind, Jericho stuff, you
Yeah.
it's so sincere. And I when I hear you talking about that, sharing it in that way, I feel like, that I am sacrificing some of this when I'm writing jokes, and I think there's a way to combine them. And that is why I'm so excited for when you do it, because I feel like it's just going to be hit.
Oh.
It'll be so
Oh.
funny, and it'll be so real as well.
Oh, thank you so much, Chelsea. I mean, it sounds like between the way that you're writing your blogs and the way you approach stand up, that you're sort of covering all your bases. It sounds like a brilliant exercise in kind of really considered, thoughtful, planned writing and more kind of reactive, I guess, emotional, impulsive sort of writing. Do you think that way of writing, and as you say, kind of trying to bring a bit more sincerity into your comedy or anything, do you think that blog writing will sort of become a way that you generate material as well?
I think so. I hope so. We'll just have to see when gigs are back a bit more normally in the new year. I wonder if they'll start to like infuse with each other, and I'd really like it if they do.
That's really cool. I mean, Oh, it's just I love having these conversations with creative people. I love chatting to you. I always find that I learn so much about comedy. You make me think about things in a different way, and certainly, I really want to be writing more, and I feel that I need to be writing more on certain topics like mental health. And yeah, I think that with Christmas coming up, I'm gonna have a little break, and then I'm gonna have some fun writing and trying out these things. And I'm definitely gonna try your kind of essay sort of style, writing down things that I know, that I feel, that I think about things, and then applying jokes. That's such a great way to generate material.
That's so cool. And
Um,
if you want to do like a writing session afterwards, I would love that. I love writing with other
yeah,
people. Yeah.
you're brilliant at organizing. I mean, you're such a proactive writer as well. I mean, what do you get out of writing with other people? Because sometimes I worry when I get together with other people that I'm maybe not at my most productive, or that I'm just not. Uh, I don't know. Like other people seem to come with 20 ideas and bits already written and stuff, and I'm kind of there like, ooh, I don't know. I'll try to say something funny and hopefully they'll laugh. But what is it for you? Because that kind of essay way that you write sounds very very considered, but then getting together with other people, is that the next step of your writing?
Yes, and I have to do it that way. Like some people, when we do writing sessions with, out yeah, with comics in Oxford, um, I have to come with it with an idea. Like I've already basically written a set that I'd say would be ready to do a new material night,
Yeah,
and then talk it through with people and be like, is this part making sense, or like, does this joke work? And people can like kindly add tags or kind of scrutinize some bits and be like, I'm a bit lost there, or because often and often the problem with a joke is not always the punchline. It's sometimes the premise. Like the premise isn't clear,
mm-hmm.
so it's kind of doing that work. I love that. I love bringing a set that's half baked and kind of completing, or not completing it, but like moving it closer to the completed piece in a writing group.
Yeah.
Some people use it for like ideas generation and be like, okay, I want to work on this bit on this, and I can't do that. I feel like my ideas are too fragile when they're just these little like green shoots. But it's like, okay, once they're a fully grown tree, then they can be like
Yeah, yeah.
pruned by others. But I can't bring it at the ideas stage. They're too they're too fragile, or I'm not yet sure what I
Yeah.
fully think about that thing.
That is so interesting. It's I love that with any kind of creative discipline, what I think is so exciting is that there are as many different valid ways of doing it as there are people doing them. I mean, the way that people write is so individual. I don't really think two people have exactly the same process. Like for some people, it's what you do. For others, going to these writing sessions with nothing and they come out with loads of ideas that they then go away and try out and write. Or some people will write it down really thoroughly and plan it out and script it almost. Some people will kind of take it on stage very loosely
I know when
and
people say
work
they
it out
write on
there.
stage, I'm like, what? If somebody saw me
Oh,
write
I
on stage, it would
know.
just be me sat with my laptop being like,
Could everybody please keep it down? I'm writing. But I think it's one of the really really cool things about kind of creativity and writing and comedy and whatever else you're doing, that they're really, I guess, within reason, but there aren't really any wrong ways of doing it, just different ways. And I think that's really cool. But certainly I think everybody can kind of learn from each other, and I know I've learned even just from talking to you there about that. And of course, if anybody's listening and also learned from you there, I would thoroughly recommend going back and listening to, I believe it was episode 6 of the Jericho Comedy Podcast, where we spoke more in depth with you and with wonderful Alex Farrow, all about kind of the topics and the way you write and everything. It's such an interesting chat. But Chelsea, I feel the need now to move on to the main course of the podcast, which is of course your dream dinner party.
ooh.
Uh, it is a fascinating group, very very interesting. Before we get into the specifics about it, what are you envisaging the tone of this dinner party to be?
This dinner party is just going to be a hoot. Like I feel like we're all going to wake up really hungover the next day. Like that's the vibe. Yeah, that's big time.
Okay, so it's very much the night before the morning
Yeah.
after. Wow. Okay, I can see that. I can definitely see it. There are still a lot of questions for me to be answered, but that helps a little. So, Chelsea, of all the places in the world where you could gather this very unique group of people, where would you be doing this if you could get them together anywhere?
So this needs to happen in 2003 for reasons that will become clear. So the venue,
Yes. Yeah.
it has to be 2003. And I thought about where, and my first option was this restaurant called Nobu in Malibu, because it's like every star from every celebrity ever goes to this restaurant. So I thought, oh, it could be there. And then I thought about it and thought, but I don't know if I like it. And so it actually has to happen, like in my favorite restaurant in 2003, which is Toby Carvery in Milton Keynes.
Amazing. I don't think I'd have guessed Toby Carvery if you'd given me 100 years. Uh, that is brilliant. I don't know if I've been to a Toby Carvery.
My goodness, you haven't lived. Well, I actually haven't been for years either, because I'm vegetarian now, and I know they have veggie and vegan options, but a carvery isn't like the go-to place for.
No. You don't go for all you can eat nut roast.
No, no, you can barely eat one slice of nut roast. It's delicious, but it's so filling.
Wow. So we're in a Toby Carvery in 2003,
Yes,
and your first guest is an American media personality, businesswoman, socialite, model, singer, actress, and DJ. She started her career with the Trump Model Management Agency, and she was a fixture of the tabloids in the early noughties. You're inviting Paris Hilton
yes,
to
I
your dinner
am.
party. No. What am I missing here, Chelsea?
Paris Hilton has been such an incredibly important figure in my life, and I'm not saying she's who I look to when I'm struggling with a moral dilemma, but she has had a huge impact on my life. Like I was talking about who I could invite to this party, and then my housemate said, "Well, who do you know a lot about?" And I was like, "Oh, Paris Hilton." And it's true. So she is, yes, a Lebutton heiress, and I came to know her in 2003, or maybe it was 2004 when it aired, but it was The Simple Life, the series she did with Nicole Richie. Have you seen it?
Yes. Uh, I'm aware of it in the cultural sphere. I avoided it.
Well, you missed out, because it's actually hilarious. Like I think it genuinely has shaped my taste in comedy. Like I used to, and I've said this before, I used to think stand up sucks. Like I thought stand up was the lowest of the low. I was like, I was just like, this is where it's at. Reality TV, and Paris Hilton and Nicole Richie were like my comedic idols. And I knew at the
Yeah.
time that they were playing. So for everyone who hasn't seen it, first of all, like go and watch it all right now. But actually, what I will say is I haven't watched it in 10 years, so I don't know how it holds up morally. So,
Sure.
um, but they are two very rich women, and then they go to live the simple life on. And season one is like they go and live in this farm in the middle of nowhere, and they have to work on the farm and cook, and they live the simple life. All their money and phones are taken away from them, and it is so funny. Like they're clearly out of like they just, yeah, they're kind of lazy, they don't want to work, they keep saying, like, their catchphrases are like, "That's hard." And this is the era of Paris Hilton as well, when she had the sexy baby voice, which was really like this cute softly spoken voice, but then regularly she'd slip out of it and her actual voice is really low, so she'd be like, "Hi, I'm Paris Hilton," and she'd be like, "Oh my god." It would go like, "That's gross." It was so funny. Yeah, she's just so funny.
Is she funny? I'm just curious because I don't really know a lot about her. Is she funny to laugh at or laugh with?
She's funny to laugh. Well, it's difficult because Paris Hilton, who she plays in The Simple Life, is definitely a persona, and that's what
Right.
people were so willing at that time to just want this like dumb blonde. And I'm doing air quotes here. They wanted this like
Sure.
stupid heiress, and she was like, kind of fine. I will be that. But it's clear that wasn't who she was. Like the jokes were very funny. Like somebody asks her about Walmart, and she's like, "What's that? Do they sell wool stuff?" Like that's a good
Right.
joke. It's a joke,
Yeah,
and that was
it is. It is.
yeah, that was her whole thing. So if it's laugh at, yes, like you're laughing at the persona, but it seems so clear to me that it was fully intentional and very successful.
Yeah, you really hit on something there about successful because she is thought of as almost the kind of archetypal dumb blonde.
Hmm.
And that is a persona that she has crafted. I don't think it's doing her necessarily a disservice to think of her as a dumb blonde because she's worked hard to be thought of that way with the baby voice. With like writing things in her book, for example, the advice she gave to young women was act ditzy and wear tiaras. Like that, maybe I'm being unfair, and I'm wary of being too critical because I don't want to be seen as misogynistic in any way. And I know there will be a lot of misogyny wrapped up in reasons why people don't like her. But to me, saying act ditzy isn't necessarily empowering advice to anybody. But then when it's kind of bemoaned that she's thought of as a dumb blonde, it's sort of because she's cultivated that. Do you see what I mean?
Yep, I see what you mean. And the reason I feel a real personal attachment to it is because so often, and you've seen this happen, I'm sure, when I do jokes on stage, people
Yeah.
think I'm confused, and sometimes people will
Yes.
explain my punchlines to me that I wrote.
Yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
and I feel like it's all tied up with this like okay, so it's not as clear in the case of Paris Hilton, but it's kind of all tied up with when is a woman being intentionally funny and when are people like it's like do you presume agency on her part? Like was that an intentional joke
Yeah.
or was it just something she said accidentally? And there's something of that in why I love Paris Hilton, and I truly don't think she is this feminist icon, but she has had
Yeah.
a huge influence on me, including her perfume Heiress, which when I smell, I just feel like I feel 16 again.
Are you wearing Heiress to the dinner party?
Yes, of course I'm wearing Heiress to the dinner party. I actually still have it. I still have
Oh,
some.
wow.
Yep, yep. I saved it. It's so disgusting. Like I only switched perfumes in when I was like 22, which was so many years after the perfume came out. It smells so nice. It's so sweet. And I just had a look at it on Amazon, and you can still buy it, and it describes it as strong scented.
I'm assuming she developed this after working on the farm and thought that she needed to overpower another scent. Um, I mean, she is like, I find myself asking really basic questions because I sort of, I don't understand her as a kind of phenomenon. So forgive me if these questions are a bit facile, but like, do you like or admire her as a person?
No, definitely.
See, that's really interesting to me that you're inviting someone who you don't really like or admire. Like, I mean, why are you inviting her actually, rather than me speculating? What is it about her that you
Well,
think would be fun at a dinner party?
I am fascinated by her. So whether I like or admire her, like I am fascinated, and I have been for years. And the world was fascinated by her. She was, I think, one of the most famous people in the world for a period of time.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah, she was.
and I just think that's so it's so interesting. Like how did that happen? Like, and she was hated. Always part of her fame was that people hated her, uh,
Yes.
and she kind of created this like reality star whole thing. You know, like she was before the Kardashians, and her and Kim
Yeah.
were friends. Like Kim was supposedly her like closet organizer. Um,
Oh, right.
yeah, she created them, but they're friends again now, and they've recently collaborated on some velour tracksuits, which is iconic.
It's coming up to Christmas, Chelsea. I know what you're getting.
I'm actually talking to you now. I'm wearing some Juicy Couture velour flares with the Diamante
Oh, yeah.
juicy on the ass. And this is all like this is Paris Hilton's influence. Like she has just whether I like her or not, she said some awful things, but she's has just had such a huge impact on my life, and I can't really explain it. So I'd love to meet her.
That's really interesting. And this, I, I'm, I'm so relieved. I have so much respect for you as a person. When I was reading about Paris Hilton, I was like, no, Chelsea, why? But this makes me feel better that you are. It's as much interested in her, and obviously, like I get her influence, particularly on kind of you as a teenager and stuff. And she was, as you said, one of the most famous people in the world, and of course, people like her, and now latterly the Kardashians have influence on people. Whether you think that's a good thing or a bad thing, that's completely up to yourself, and it's not anybody else's place to say. Um, but Paris Hilton is a very, very flawed person. I mean, aside from the kind of drink and drug charges that she's faced from police, like she's used some really homophobic and gross racist language. She said of the women who accused President Trump of sexual assault that they were uh, what was it? Just trying to get attention and get fame. Like she is objectively quite an awful
Yeah,
person.
that is clearly despicable. But
But like,
that's
what kind of behavior would you expect from her at your party?
I actually think she'd probably be quite mellow. Like I think she plays this party girl, and she's a DJ. But I think so. Recently, she had a documentary out this year that was called "This Is Paris," and it actually revealed a lot about her, including that she was abused as a teen at this residential behavioral school. And it's like this big,
Hmm.
it's reignited people talking about her, but it also made people think about how she was treated by the media at the time. Like, remember she had that sex tape that leaked that was called like a
Yeah.
night in Paris or something like that.
Yes. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
people just treated her like, she did that on purpose, that she was like, and again, I'm air quoting this, like a slut. And that was just,
Sure.
that was the full narrative at the time. But what happened is she had a much older boyfriend who leaked a sex tape of her. And, she was a victim in that situation, but it was spoken about like she
Yeah.
was just such a, like, it's just so different how we treat celebrities now. I think if that happened today, people would never treat her like that. And I'm sure that's not that it excuses like the very, very despicable things she said, but she just has lived a life quite different from really anybody else's, and it was one of
Yeah.
the first to live a life like this. And yeah, I kind of think if you want to understand, here we go, here's a claim. If you want to understand modern society, you need to understand Paris Hilton. That is why she's coming to join me in 2003 at the Toby Carvery in Milton Keynes.
I think you're absolutely right. Like to a very large extent, I totally agree with you. I mean, it's also we live in a world where everything's so binary. She's either one thing or another, and as you said, she's clearly a victim of a very, very, very public, uh, invasion of privacy with her sex tape being leaked. And on the other hand, she's also a reprehensible racist and homophobe. Like the two, she can be both wronged against and wrong. And I think we're too keen to label someone as either a hero or a villain that we don't look at a lot of the gray area in between. So she's certainly a fascinating person to have there, and I'd love to. Well, no, I wouldn't necessarily like to meet her, but I would love to talk to you after this dinner party and get your impressions of her from having spoken to her. I mean, a really fascinating guest to kick off your dinner party. And your next guest is actually two guests, but to all intents and purposes, they're essentially interchangeable. They were the stars of Full House and the Adventures of Mary Kate and Ashley. You got the Olsen twins coming to dinner.
Yes, I have the Olsen
The
twins.
Olsen twins. What a blast from the past. 2003.
Yep. So in 2003, they are 17. So I don't know what age I'm supposed to be at this party, but hopefully, hopefully that's okay. I was telling Alex Farrow of Jericho Comedy, and my boyfriend. Um, I
That is the order of things.
that's
Alex Farrell of Jericho Comedy and your long term partner.
well, I was telling him about Mary Kate and Ashley, and he said, "Oh, was one of them Miley Cyrus?" What, what does he mean? And he was like, "Well, Miley was a different person." I was like, "Yeah, Hannah Montana."
I love that as a question. There is nothing about Voltaire or like Aristophanes that Alex can't tell you. But he does think that the Olsen twins might have been Miley Cyrus and Hannah Montana.
So funny. He also said it sounds like there's three of them. Like, you know, there's like the Olsen triplets.
Oh yeah, Mary Kate and Ashley.
But I'm so glad you've let me invite them as one. If I had to choose one, back in 2003, it definitely was
Oh yeah.
Mary Kate. Mary Kate was my favorite. She was like the cooler, like rocker kind of one. But nowadays, thinking about it, Ashley seems really nice. And so if I had to choose one these days, maybe it would be Ashley. But luckily, I don't have to.
Oh.
They're both coming.
They're both there. They're both there. Well, what was the beginning of your kind of relationship with the Olsen twins?
I can't remember a time when I didn't know who the Olsen twins were. Like I feel like they've just been there my whole life. um, and they're a few years older than me. Like they're 6 years older than me, and that's a really good age as a kid to look up to people about 6 years older because it seems like, oh my god, they're so grown up, they can do anything.
Yes, they've experienced the world.
Yeah, and so I think they are so fascinating as well because so they were the CEO of their company Jewel Star, which made like 38 videos, 38 films. Most of them were straight to VHS, and then before they released the best film in 2004, so it would have been filmed at this time, so I could still talk to them about it, which was their cinema release, which was New York Minute, which was at the time incredible. Like they're lost in New York. There's Simple Plan are in it, who are a pop punk band, and Mary Kate's playing an Avril Lavigne type character, and it's so good. It's on Netflix now as of December 2020, and I rewatched it, and it was a lot more problematic than I recalled.
Oh, go on. And what is this the kind of thing that she and Paris Hilton would get on well?
Well, to be fair, they were 17. Like, I don't think they had, whereas Paris Hilton was 19. That's the thing as well. Paris Hilton was so young when she was famous, but the Mary Kate and Ashley were even younger. And yeah, okay, so the film, first of all, like, Ashley's character berates Mary Kate's for giving to the homeless. It's like you should never give to the
Oh wow.
which is just very peculiar and not at all relevant to the plot. Like, they just added that. um, there's some the main
Well,
villain in the film he's a white man, but he has like this, I'm gonna say, like pan Asian accent, and there's a few
oh
better
my.
jokes about how he shouldn't have that, but they don't do enough to solve the problem that has it. Oh god, there's so much more. It's just a very very bizarre and surreal film.
That is very interesting. I'm almost tempted to watch it. Almost.
Should and you know what, this is the thing, I think that's bad and it shouldn't happen anymore, but watching the film I still thoroughly enjoyed it. I still have this like non-ironic love for them. Like, I still am obsessed with them. And what is like so fascinating about them is they made these like 39 films. They were like, mega stars, especially for like the tween audience. Then they turned
Yeah.
18, became acting CEOs of their company, and never, like, just disappeared from the public eye. Like, Ashley never acted in a film again. Mary Kate acted in one, and then that's it. They have no social media accounts. They rarely do interviews, and it is so unheard of that they've just done that.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's really interesting. I mean, yeah, I mean, God, they'd be fascinating people to have there because obviously, like, they were thrust into the limelight when they were 6 months old, so they have literally never known life without being in the public eye, and with that must come the most extraordinary pressure and yeah, and just the scrutiny that they're facing. I mean, they were the youngest producers in Hollywood history. They had their own company that you mentioned that was formed at the age of 6.
Yep.
They were producers of a Hollywood company at the age of 6. They were millionaires by the age of 10. Um, I mean, do you think you would want to talk to them about what it's like to spend your whole life in the public eye, or do you think you just want to have fun with them, or what would you be hoping for with them there?
Partly both. I think they're actually very, I don't know them, obviously, but I think they're very sad about the fame thing. Like, their childhood didn't they didn't really have a normal childhood. And they never
No.
really knew any different. But like it's weirdly meta referenced in so many of their films. Like there's this incredible Vulture article that describes basically all of the films as some form of chilling. Like there's so many references where like they sing songs about stolen childhoods, or how they live in a hotel all the time, or how when they grow up they want to be a kid. And it's they yet nevertheless, like the whole time they talk about how much they love their work, and then the second they
Yeah.
turn 18 and get control, it just drops off. Like it's spooky, but they've kind of managed to, like, they're now these fashion moguls, they and fashion
Yes.
designers, and they seem okay. They seem all right, and for a lot of people who've been child stars, that's not like the story that really works out.
No.
So yeah,
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I can't imagine how they could be happy. But do you think it's 2003, they're 17, we think you're a teenager, Paris Hilton's there. There's meat on demand at Toby Carvery. Like, are they fun at this party? Do you think you're gonna have a laugh with them? Like, what would you want to? I know. What do you think they would be like as a pair at your party?
well, first of all, I think they'd just be so cool. Like they'd be dressed in the most incredible like vintage outfits with like their John Lennon glasses, and they're like they'd just be the cool. Like they're just so cool. I've never lost that feeling of looking at them being like, oh my god, I want them to be my friends. Um, but I don't know. In the interviews I've seen them do when they were teens, they seem very strange. Like there feels like there is a real sadness there. So I don't know if that would be present at the party. Um,
It's a fun thing to wait and see. Are the Olsen twins going to be super miserable at my party?
but surely not. Like it's a Toby Carvery. Like we're going to be having a whale of a
Exactly.
time.
Paris Hilton's there. Chelsea Birkby's there. It's going to be fun. I think they'll have a riot. I mean, your second guests, brilliant additions to what is fast becoming the party of 2003 that everyone's talking about.
Yep.
And
God.
throw that into the mix with your next guest, another person who rose to prominence at a very young age. She's a Canadian singer and songwriter who signed her first record label at the age of 16. You're writing Avril Lavigne.
Yes, I am. I'm doing the rock on songs signs right now. Like, oh my god.
I mean, we were all Avril Lavigne fans. She was very. I saw her live once and she winked at me. Yeah, it was at one of the like BBC Radio 1 One Big Weekend things in Northern Ireland, and I was near the front of the crowd and she winked at me. It
That
was very exciting.
is incredible. And you know, our audience, our listeners are very privileged because Avril Lavigne has also looked me in the eyes as well.
Oh my god. What are the chances that there are 4 eyes on this podcast that have looked directly into those of Avril Lavigne? That's not every podcast can say that, Chelsea. What was your experience of seeing Avril Lavigne?
So this was the first time I've seen Avril Lavigne. I've seen Avril Lavigne 7 times.
Oh my god.
I went to see her at like a tiny venue in Birmingham, and it must have been like 2003. It was like before she was like Complicated was out, but I don't know if her album was, or she just wasn't she wasn't as well known as she later. Like I saw her before she was cool, and it was in this tiny venue in Birmingham, and yes, I sat at the back because I was a child, like sat on a bar, like the bar at the back, and she looked at me, and it was like at that time and probably for a few years afterwards, the best moment of my life. And that gig changed me. Like I went in and I really remember what I was wearing. I was wearing this blue Eeyore top that I got from New Look, and these incredible like low rise bootleg jeans that were like tied with string. But then I went and bought an Avril Lavigne top and I changed it. I feel like that's the moment I went from like child wearing my Eeyore top to like rock chick.
Oh, why? I wonder how many people share that experience. You kind of go to an Avril Lavigne concert, you go in a girl and you come out a woman.
Yep. I think a lot of people share
Amazing.
that experience. Was that your experience when you saw
I certainly did leave with some complicated feelings. I don't quite know if I became a woman that day, but maybe it set me on the path. I mean, Avril Lavigne, she's also supremely talented. Like, I mean, maybe with Paris Hilton, I was kind of like, I don't know what her talent is, but with Avril Lavigne, it's so clear. She's a singer and a songwriter, and I mean, she was a real prodigy because she started at like the age of 12 writing songs. She
Yep,
was singing with Shania Twain at the age of 15. I mean,
yep. Shania Twain, also a legend. I would love
oh.
for her to be at a party, but sadly she can't come to this one. Sorry, Shania, it's full.
You're not quite in keeping with the cool young crowd of 2003, Shania. But yeah. I mean, what do you think you would want to talk to Avril Lavigne about? Do you think you'd be able to keep your cool around her, or do you think you would kind of geek out a little bit?
I think I would geek out. Like, of anything I've been, Avril Lavigne is the biggest fan of anything. Wait, sorry, I'm too. Okay, I'm freaking out now. Even just like the biggest fan I've ever been of anything is Avril Lavigne,
Yes.
and I don't think it will be topped because that kind of fandom, obsession, stan kind of ness you have
Yeah.
reaches its peak in your teenage years, and mine was fully just toward Avril Lavigne. Like, I was obsessed with her. Like, I knew everything about her. I had all of her like
Hmm.
demos, including like of her old like Christian music that she used to do. Like, I was
Oh,
obsessed.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm still like, I'm talking to you now. I'm smug. Like, I'm like, yeah, I know everything. Like, I'm still proud of it. That's still that part of me. And it's basically why I still have the hair that I do. Like, it's because of Avril Lavigne's hair in Complicated. Like, she's just, yeah. She's a
Oh, my
huge influence
goodness.
still. You know, like Billie Eilish is like Avril Lavigne made me. Like, she's,
Oh,
yep,
right.
yep. Whew, okay, I'm a bit
I mean,
excited.
this is amazing. I mean, so many of my questions were going to be about kind of when you first became a fan and everything, but it's so clear. I mean, she really seems to just make you feel, I don't know, unlike anything else I think I've ever heard Chelsea Birkby kind of expressing. I
She,
mean, if you could ask her anything, if you sort of had the opportunity to ask her a question, what do you think you would want to ask her?
well, oh, oh my God. Well, I know everything. You know, like 2003 Avril. Like, I don't think there's anything that I didn't know about her. But this is why. Okay, so a crucial point about Avril Lavigne is I would have to invite her in 2003 because that was before she was replaced.
This sounds like one of the best conspiracy theories I've ever heard.
Have you heard this before?
No, please enlighten me.
Okay, so Avril Lavigne died in 2003. This is
Of
this is
course.
the theory. She Because if you look back at videos from Avril Lavigne in 2002 and interviews, she's like,
Yeah.
she's really moody. She talks a lot about how she hates fame. She hates being labeled, blah, blah, blah. And she's like, yeah, so that's her. And then she apparently died, actually, apparently she died by suicide because she couldn't handle fame. But she had a body double called Melissa, and Melissa would go to these events for her so that she didn't have to. And when Avril Lavigne died, she was too important to her record label for her to have died, so they just replaced her with Melissa. And
Oh my god.
that's why like her kind of vibe changed after that, and apparently some beauty marks changed and things like that. And Avril Lavigne to this day has a tattoo that says Melissa. How do you explain that?
So you're inviting Avril, not Melissa. I mean, do you do you tell 2003 Avril Lavigne that in 2020 Melissa is still going strong?
uh, no, this is what I don't think I could do that to her. You know, she was clearly already having a hard time.
True. Let her enjoy the night.
But I mean, obviously, I don't believe that. But there is some pretty compelling evidence. But obviously, I don't believe it. You know?
It's fascinating that the world is the kind of place that even tells those stories and espouses those theories. And there will be people out there who honestly believe that.
I know. And modern day Avril Lavigne hates this. Like, she's had to say like, no, Melissa doesn't exist, and she's had to explain that like the reason she kind of dropped off the radar is because she had Lyme disease. It's not that she's like now actually Melissa.
Yeah.
So imagine having to explain that. Like, imagine you just go into your day job and everyone's like, okay, fake Connor.
That is incredible. I mean, Wow. I mean, oh, there's so much I want to ask you about her, but time's working against me. But do you have a favorite like piece of Avril Lavigne's, like favorite album, favorite single? Is there anything you'd hope for a little performance at
Oh
dinner?
my god. Let Go, her first album, is just still one of the most iconic albums of all time. And from that, I oh god, I guess Skater Boy is what I'd like to see her perform. Although maybe probably Complicated, because I even remember the first time I saw that music video, and I was supposed to be tidying up, and I just stopped and stared at the TV. Like in 2002, that just changed my life. So yep, Complicated. I want her to perform Complicated at Toby Carvery.
This is going to be a party to remember. Avril Lavigne performing complicated. My favorite is "I'm with You." The
Oh,
cello in it is so great.
so good. And
Uh,
I still have a cutout of she when I went to see her live, I think in 2004, like there were all these cutouts of her advertising I'm with you that she didn't need anymore, and that's still in my childhood bedroom. Like sometimes I'll
oh
go through,
wow!
yep, I'll go back and like peer through my old clothes, like sentimental clothing, and then
Yeah.
Avril Lavigne's head would kind of pop out of my closet.
I'd maybe avoid telling her that as well. Actually, I've got your head in my bedroom.
Oh, I have one more story about Avril Lavigne, and I know we need to move on, but
Oh please, no, go for it.
I was so influenced by her that for my year 7 leavers assembly, and year 7 was when in Milton Keynes we left primary school at that time. I don't know, it was a weird system. I sang one of her songs. I can't even remember the name of it, but it was a song about her granddad dying. My granddad hadn't died. I think he was there, but I still sang. Um, oh, it's called Slipped Away, and it was like the day you slipped away. Yeah, anyway, I was singing that.
Oh okay.
Granddad was there, probably. Um, And then this was the day that the iconic, like all the girls in my class, apart from me, because I was a rock chick, I wasn't like other girls, they did
Of
a dance,
course.
of course, they did a dance to some Mix-a-Lot's Baby Got Back, uh, which the teachers allowed, so long as it didn't have the talking bit at the beginning, where it's like, oh my God, Becky, look at her butt. They were like, absolutely not. This has got children involved. Uh, Whereas the singing bit, where it's like knock-kneed bimbos walking like hoes, they were like, sure, it's a party. But it went wrong, and you can't blame the tech guy because he was also 11, and he turned it up just as it went prostitute as like 12-year-old girls ran on stage. It was such a confusing farewell from the class of '04, and I feel like this is all tied in with Avril's. If it wasn't for Avril, I would have been in that dance.
Oh, amazing! Avril saved you from being publicly outed as a prostitute at the age of 14. Oh, well, Avril, it sounds like you would be having the time of your life already, even if it was just those guests. But you have two more, and your next guest is continuing on the theme of women who were at the peak of their popularity in the early noughties. She's a singer and songwriter who, in fact, was the best selling teenage artist of all time. She rose to fame with her song Baby One More Time. Your fourth guest is, of course, Britney Spears.
It's Britney, bitch.
Yes!
Yeah,
I was going to say that, but I was worried I couldn't pull it off, so I'm glad you did it.
I would love if you said it, and I'd be like, "Oh my God, Connor, that's incredibly offensive."
That is not okay, Connor.
I saw the
Oh,
best meme, and I don't know who to credit it to. This is the difficult thing about memes, and it's like how
yes.
whenever people's houses are haunted by ghosts, there are always these Victorian ghosts saying these profound things. Whereas in the future, if they have ghosts from our time, it would just be like, "It's Britney, bitch."
Oh my god, future ghosts are going to be the worst. But yes, Britney Spears at your dinner party, 2003. Is this at the point with Britney? You'll know more than me. Is this when she's not a girl but not yet a woman?
Yes, yes. So
Okay.
2003 is also crucially before she was cloned, but we will get onto that. Um, yeah, yeah. Oh, Britney. See, I feel very strange about Britney, especially because where I was basically Avril Lavigne, there was this like weird Avril Lavigne was the anti Britney Spears narrative that was going on.
Yeah.
But actually, I think they were friends. And I think they like each other. And I think that was a whole like sexist narrative that Avril was this like real artist and she was not a hoe, again in quote marks, and then
Sure.
Britney Spears apparently was. And just the stuff they were asked about, like in preparation for this, I've been watching some of their interviews, and so many people just ask these 18-year-old girls about their virginity and when they've had sex, if they've had sex.
Yeah.
It's so disgusting.
It's so creepy. I remember when Britney Spears and Justin Timberlake were going out, and she was, this virgin or whatever, and people were obsessed with it. And I remember hearing something about, oh no, she can't be a virgin because they went to a hotel and got a water bed. Like that meant that they definitely had sex. And like it's so creepy. I mean, we talked about Paris Hilton earlier and the role of the media and the intrusion, and I don't think there's anybody at the table, including Paris Hilton, who's maybe suffered as much with media intrusion, perhaps, as Britney Spears.
It is,
Um,
yeah, it's so awful. Like, it's shocking. But hopefully I'll distract her with a lovely carvery.
Britney would love some bread sauce on some slightly dried out beef. Uh, I mean, what would you be hoping? What qualities do you think Britney Spears would be bringing to your dinner party?
I think she would be, oh my God, I think she would be really fun. Like, have you seen her Instagram recently?
I haven't had the pleasure.
You're missing out. I think she's recently got control of her Instagram, like for herself for the first time.
Okay.
And the
Yeah.
internet's been really mean about it and have called it like some very horrible things. And that's because, in fairness, they are very strange. But they're not harming anybody. I think that's just her true self, and her true self is very strange, but having a lovely time. And I think it's wonderful. So,
Mm.
so I think, although I'm having Britney from 2003 before she was cloned, I think Britney is just a lot of fun. She seems like a lot of fun.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think so. I think she seems to have a good sense of humor and that kind of thing. I mean, you've mentioned that Britney's been cloned twice now, so I feel I have to ask you, Chelsea, has Britney Spears been cloned?
Of course, Britney hasn't been cloned, but this is actually like the Melissa one with Avril Lavigne is obviously stupid. But this one, when I was looking into this, I was like, okay, obviously this is stupid. But then a few minutes in, I was like, oh, okay, this is actually quite compelling. Like, there's a lot of evidence for this. It's like I have to be careful with these things. Like, just yesterday, I went to maybe this is even a hack thing to talk about, but I went to Aldi and they have that middle aisle, and I was like, what stupid stuff have they got here? And then I was immediately like, oh, a hair curler, and I took it to the till, and it was only just before like I paid that I like sobered up and was like, I don't need a hair curler on a whim.
So this theory about Britney being cloned, this is the Aldi hair curler of theories.
Yes, like you think, oh,
Okay.
this is going to be so stupid, I'm not going to get roped into this, but then actually you're like, it
Well,
is
go
kind
on,
of weird.
convince me.
Okay, so obviously Britney Spears had a very difficult time being launched into superstardom at a young age,
Of
and
course, yeah.
there's a whole bunch of creepy stuff. Like apparently, if you play, she was 16 when she sang "Hit Me, Baby" when she released that,
Yeah.
which is crazy. But also because she's wearing a school uniform, and I remember just thinking of it as like, I guess, like a school uniform fantasy kind of thing. It's like, but no, feasibly she could have been wearing a school uniform. Like that's
Yeah.
just anyway. If you play that backwards, apparently it says "Sleep with me, I'm not too young." But anyway, okay,
Jesus.
sorry, I've fallen into like a Reddit conspiracy Britney hole. But I stumbled across that trying to find about this theory, and it's that she, first of all, she sings in that like baby Britney voice.
Yes.
Apparently,
Yeah.
that was all like designed and shaped, and if you see like videos of her singing at a younger age, she has like a big, powerful voice. And then people say this is because she's been like shaped into, and this is all feasible, that could possibly happen. But then
Yeah.
in 2004, she worked on her first album that she wrote the songs herself, and it was never
Mhm.
released, and it was called Original Doll. Original Doll, as in the original Britney before she was cloned. And she had this one song on there called Mona Lisa, and it's about a girl who'd been cloned. And it's like, she's the original, she's unforgettable, she wants you to know she's been cloned. And she took this to like, her record label didn't know about it. And then one day in 2004, she just walked up to a radio station in LA with like her dog in one arm and her CD in the other, and was like, play this song. And they played the song, and her record label were like, we know nothing about this, and they like shut the whole album down. But it's this whole album that has a bunch of songs about being cloned, and they never let it out. And it's got one called Rebellion, and it's like, don't trust the ones closest to you, and it's all this kind of creepy stuff. And then a few years later, in a video that was actually released, that's about her being cloned. So
Wow.
yeah.
It requires more reading before I commit to a position on it.
No, answer me now. Are you convinced?
I'm 99% sure Britney Spears has been cloned.
Thank you. Thank you.
I mean, Britney Spears, as an act and as a musician, like she's seen to have kind of been the trigger for the biggest shift in pop since kind of Madonna. I mean, she was hugely, hugely influential. What is it about her work that you think is kind of so enduring?
I'm not sure. They're just great songs like that you want to dance to. Like as soon as you hear the beginning with like the bells of, or I don't know, they're just great, and they've been with me like at every point of my life. Like I remember in 2008 when she released Circus. That album was like, I remember playing that at house parties. So she was there at like school discos through to house
Hmm.
parties. Like she's just been there at every stage releasing absolute bangers. What do you think it is? Like why is she so good?
I don't really know. Like, I mean, I liked her when I was younger. Her songs were certainly very catchy. But I do kind of think part of her popularity was because of the way she looked. Like, I mean, I think, yeah, I don't really know. I guess there was that whole creepy obsession that you alluded to earlier about her as a sort of sexual object when she was still a child.
Yeah.
And then when she kind of went into that, like, I'm a slave for you bit, where she was like, no, I'm an adult now, you can properly perv on me.
Yep.
I don't know. I think the way she's been marketed and the way that her sort of sexuality has been used for years, I think is kind of equal parts understandable because she's an attractive woman in an industry that values looks, but also I think it's really sinister. And I think the way that she's as a person been treated is just really weird. I mean, she's a fascinating choice. I don't want it to sound condescending or anything, but I feel desperately sorry for her as a person. But but as a singer and everything, I mean, like you don't get Vegas residencies, you don't become one of the highest selling artists of all time without real musical talent as well. So clearly, she's just a very very unique talent as well.
Yeah. Yeah, she definitely is. And that was another thing I forgot about the clone theory is that like there's a video of her on YouTube um singing, and it's like the feed off her mic when she's live performing, and the singing is really bad, and everyone like is like, look, this is evidence that this is like new clone Britney that can't sing. But I think that must just happen, like if you sing in quite an affected baby voicey way for a while, I think that
Yeah.
just happens to your voice. But yeah, she is a huge talent, and it's just so interesting, like, and sad what happened to her, like how she was treated. But the fact she has like year after year, or like she's still so popular. I think she's still one of the most. She is literally an icon. Like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
without a doubt. And the number of artists, like you say, Avril Lavigne kind of influenced Billie Eilish and so many others. I think without Britney Spears as well, you don't have people like Ariana Grande and I think Cardi B has also said that Britney Spears was an influence on her, and so many kind of modern pop stars who just wouldn't be around if it weren't for Britney Spears. Well, yeah, I mean, she is with those first four guests. You really have captured the spirit of 2003. But I think your final guest is someone. I think if you were to picture 2003 as a person, this person is 2003. Um, Cut from a slightly different cloth from the other guests. For a start, he was a man, and he's not so much a tabloid socialite so much as a French philosopher, playwright, novelist, political activist, and literary critic who is one of the key figures in 20th century French philosophy and Marxism. Your final guest, of course, was a prime influence on all of your previous guests, Jean Paul Sartre.
is Jean Paul Sartre a bitch?
We talked earlier just about how you incorporate philosophy into your stand up. When did you become a fan of Sartre's?
I became a fan of Sartre's like everybody else when I was 16 years old. I like had watched a couple of French films. I bought a beret and I was like, this is who I am now. And it's somebody who reads Jean-Paul Sartre and knows about Jean-Paul Sartre. Um, and then I later went on to, I studied philosophy at university, and my obsession just continued and became actually real. Like, it was more like I actually read about existentialism rather than just being like, he's cool, you know, like rather than just thinking it was cool to be black and white in like 60s Paris with some jazz on.
Yeah.
Well, I loved vintage shopping, and I guess that was it. I think that was my main identity for a little while. Like, I'd moved on from rock chick, I'd moved on from like the Avril Lavigne stage, and then I'd gone to like indie girl. So I'd wear white tights and vintage dresses. And the next step in that line is to start reading Jean-Paul Sartre. Um,
And to become an existentialist.
and to become an existentialist is a natural progression. Um, but I am actually like really, really taken with the philosophy, and I'm not a religious person, and so I've never really been a religious person. But how I feel about existentialism is kind of close. It's so core in my belief structure and kind of how I see the
Yeah,
world
yeah.
that it probably is the closest thing I have to kind of a religion, which is probably what Jean Paul Sartre would hate because he is a kind of anti-religion.
Of course.
um,
Well, that's really interesting. I mean, for people who aren't familiar with the concept of existentialism or what Sartre sort of espoused, um, what was the kind of, if you can sum up existentialism, which is such a ridiculous thing to ask, but yeah, how would you describe it to someone who doesn't know what it is?
So I will try my best, but what I will say is Sartre is very confusing, even for people who study Sartre. Like, he's kind of
Yeah.
he writes in this poetic way, and that's kind of his appeal because he's also a novelist. But he doesn't really write in straightforward philosophy, and so part of the appeal of Sartre is that you can kind of understand it, but you kind of can't, and that's like how it's written in. That said, the very basics of how to kind of summarize existentialism is you might have heard the quote, existence precedes essence. Have you heard that?
Yeah.
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 And so what I make of that is he's saying, first of all, we exist and then we make ourselves. So whereas if you take an object out in the world like a mug, because that is what I'm looking at right now, a mug exists for a purpose. You know, it's to put tea in or it's to put vodka in. You know, and like you, a mug exists and you know what you're supposed to do with it. It kind of has a
Yeah.
preordained purpose. It kind of has its own meaning. Whereas for humans, where we have consciousness, we exist first. We are born, and then we have to decide what we're going to be. We're not like a mug. We have to decide. We have to decide what we
Yeah.
are. So then a flip side of that is existentialism is a philosophy of radical freedom. By that he means we are completely free. Like, unlike the mug that has this set fixed way, we as humans are free to make ourselves whatever we want to be. And he says famously, man is condemned to be free. And the reason he says
Yes.
yes,
Yeah.
and the reason he says condemned is because kind of if you have this very radical freedom, you also have this very intense responsibility because unlike a mug that just has to be that way, you have no excuse. You can't say, well, I just am what I am. It's like, no, because you could be something different. You can't shirk that responsibility, and that's where the phrase like existential crisis kind of comes from, because it's trying to find out, where is my place in the world, what do I do? And it's a crisis because you can't really ask anybody else. Nobody else can tell you, because that, and this is the final concept I'm trying to, is to live in bad faith. And to live in bad faith is to kind of shirk your freedom and responsibility, and we're all drawn to that because it's comfortable. Like, everybody says, oh, I have to do this job, or I'd love to go and be a writer and explore the world, but I can't because I have to blah blah blah. And we have all these things that we say, but Sartre says this is living in bad faith. You need to live authentically. You need to live true to yourself and be free and actually kind of take responsibility for that freedom. And his famous example of this is looking at a waiter in one of the like fancy French cafes on the West Bank.
Yeah.
And the waiter is kind of acting too much like a waiter. The way he moves is too quick. The way he has his hand behind his back, it's more like he's being, it's like doing an impersonation of a waiter. And that is to live in
Okay.
bad faith, because instead of just being the person that he is doing waiter work, he has become a waiter. His idea of himself is, I am a waiter. I'm not free because I'm just here being a waiter. And
Oh my god.
so that's existentialism. I hope that's completely clear. Thank you, everybody.
It's you've described it very clearly. I mean, it does sound like a recipe for one extended panic attack, though. Like listening
Yes.
to his worldview. Do you think he would be a fun person to be around?
Yes, because he also loved drinking, smoking, and dancing. So,
That would actually make him fit in pretty damn well with this group of people.
yep. And as we
I
know,
mean,
Sartre loves Paris. So, and also,
like,
Avril Lavigne can speak French because she's Canadian, but she didn't speak it.
yes.
She went to learn it as an adult. So, Avril Lavigne can kind of translate what Sartre's
Oh,
saying.
that would be perfect.
Yep. It's
This
actually a
is the
great
duo we
mix.
never knew we needed, Sartre and Levine. I mean, Sartre, he famously wrote in Huiclo, Hell is Other People.
Yep.
Do you think he'd feel that way about this dinner party?
Yeah, absolutely. But then, and sorry, there's like a dark side to all of these. Sartre had quite a lot of
No.
young lovers, so I'd want to be very careful with him around
Oh,
like the
yeah.
Olsens, perhaps.
Oh, he'd love the Olsen twins.
He would
Yeah.
love the Olsen twins. So, yeah, we have to keep an eye on him. Also, I'm starting to
That is
think
a
that
very
like,
worthwhile point.
what am I bringing to this party? How am I going to get them to like me? Like, this is a lot of fantastic people here. I don't know what I can bring.
Oh, I have no doubt whatsoever that your passion for all their work would certainly immediately make you very attractive to them. But also, you're Chelsea motherfucking Birkby. Who the hell doesn't like you? They
Thank
would love Chelsea Birkby. I mean, Sartre. God, I want to picture this conversation where Paris Hilton's talking about having to go and work on a farm. I mean, how do you think Sartre would? Well, what do you think he would make of like the modern obsession with celebrity? Because he was well known, and I think he quite enjoyed being thought of as a kind of a public intellectual, or a renowned intellectual. But what do you think he would make of someone like Paris Hilton, who's seemingly famous simply for being famous?
I think he would absolutely hate it. I think he'd hate it in like a Marxist kind of way. But then that's what's really strange about like with Paris Hilton. She's obviously very very wealthy, but she's not like classy. She's trashy, and I mean that with love and praise. And I'm saying that
Sure.
to somebody wearing like Diamantes that say "juicy" on my ass right now. uh, yeah, I feel like he'd hate it, but then he is also clearly drawn to glamour. So, I mean, would he also love it?
Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, and also if he just enjoyed a good drink and a good dance and smoking, like maybe he would feel quite free around these people who just want to have a bit of a party and a good time.
Yeah, maybe he would. And he'd have to, like, it would be, imagine seeing Jean Paul Sartre doing, like, the Macarena. He'd get to
We
teach
are condemned to boogie. Uh, I mean, he was also. You obviously know so much more about Sartre than I do, but when I was reading about him, I read that he was also a prankster.
I didn't know
Uh,
he was a prankster.
he apparently played. Apparently he played quite a few pranks, but one of his most famous ones was that he released like a press release to newspapers saying that the college or the university or wherever he was working was giving Charles Lindbergh an honorary degree. Charles Lindbergh was one of the first people to fly uninterrupted from New York to Paris or something. And so he told the papers that his workplace was giving Charles Lindbergh an honorary degree. And so thousands of journalists showed up to this event, and Sartre hired a lookalike to come along. And the result was that the director of the school had to resign because of
What?
this prank. Yeah. So classic pranksman, Jean Paul Sartre. I mean, what kind of behavior would you expect from him at your dinner party?
Well, it seems like it would be major. He's not talking about like whoopee cushion level of pranks. He's talking about like,
Oh yeah, this is like lose a man his job kind of
yeah,
pranks.
the whole
Yeah.
of the Tobury Carvery will be shut down forever. Yeah, Toby's out of work, definitely.
But
Wow.
yeah, what do you think he would be like? I mean, do you think he would join in any of the chat? Do you think he would sit back and listen, or do you think he would just be constantly going to get more meat?
I think actually that in the description, like Simone de Beauvoir kind of writes about him, I think he loves taking younger women under his wing. Yes, Sartre had wings. Twist. And, um, telling them, like, kind of teaching them about existentialism and his views. So maybe, like, I think he would just be drinking and trying to like tell them all about existentialism. And he was apparently quite captivating. Like he was very interesting to talk to and fun. So I think he would be a good addition to the party. But what I will say is, I will confess that I have done the dinner party with you, Connor, before, and we did it on
Yes,
when it was on the radio.
it's
And
true.
I think a more fun existentialist absurdist would be Albert Camus. I think he'd be a lot of fun. And I'd also like to kind of defend myself a little bit and say that my first guests were Albert Camus, Simone de Beauvoir, RuPaul, and Martin Lewis, money saving expert. um, so I do, and do you know what? That was good. But honestly, I think this party is going to be even better.
I mean, you are definitely you're the first person who's had the opportunity to invite. Well, it was 4 guests the first time.
Yep.
It's supposed to be 5 now, but technically 6. So you've had 10 guests, and it is the perfect mix of celebrity pop culture people like RuPaul and Britney Spears and existential philosophers. I think it so perfectly sums up Chelsea Birkby. I think your guests have been brilliant. I mean, this dinner party, you've got Paris Hilton, the Olsen twins, Avril Lavigne, Britney Spears, and Jean Paul Sartre at a Toby Carvery in 2003.
Oh my god,
It's so fantastic.
it's so good. I
I
really
mean, one thing I like to ask Chelsea about guests is if there's a common thread that runs through them all, and I think it's certainly easier for the first 4 uh, to pick a common thread. But even like beyond the obvious that they were all famous in 2003, like I think there's a lot that we've talked about in terms of uh, media intrusion and perception of them as kind of artists and the way that they've perhaps been disrespected in some quarters or whatever. But is there anything else that I'm missing? Like, what for you ties all of these guests together? There may not be anything because Sartre is so different, but I'm intrigued. What do you think?
I literally think it's just it's just the impact they've had on my life. That's it. That's why I've gathered these people together. Well, I mean, I don't know. Maybe they've all Sartre was actually quite vain as a boy, and then he had these long flowing locks, and everyone would think he was so beautiful, like they were really long and curly. And then his grandfather hated them because they made him look like a girl, which is obviously disgusting. And one day when his mother was out, so his grandfather took him to the barbers
Oh yeah.
and cut his hair off, like cut all of his long locks. And Sartre writes of that moment, he's like, I looked in the mirror and I discovered my true ugliness. And I
Oh
think we can all
gosh.
relate to that moment when the hairdresser spins you round to reveal they've ruined your fucking life. And so I think Sartre's had to reflect a lot about like his image and his looks as these women have. Maybe it's that, perhaps they could write something really incredible about what it is to be
That is
beautiful.
interesting.
Sartre writes a lot about self-portraiture. This is okay. Here we go. Sartre writes a lot about self-portraiture and how that's a part of like reclaiming our freedom. To write
Hmm.
is to be yourself, to like capture yourself as you are. And in a way, is that not what Paris Hilton is doing on Instagram? Does she not know thyself thee? So really, who is the philosopher here? Is it Jean-Paul Sartre or is it Paris
Or
Hilton?
local legend Chelsea Birkby. I like that as a thing that a kind of common thread through them. I mean, I might not be as big a fan of these people as you. I might even despise one or two of them.
What,
But
two? Is there another one you despise?
no, actually, I didn't want Paris to feel left out. But yeah, I loathe her. But I think you've put together a fascinating group. If even if I don't want to sit down for this dinner party, I'd like to be at another table at this Toby Carvery and kind of just like listen in because I think it would be fascinating. The last thing that I usually ask people is about what they would cook, but you're at a Toby Carvery, so I don't know if. And by the way, I should drop in at this moment. This podcast is sponsored by Toby Carvery. It's been a scam all along. But Chelsea, I know you've told me before that you're not an enthusiastic cook. You're not
Yes.
a foodie. So, what would this extraordinary group of people be eating, and probably more importantly, drinking at this dinner party?
Okay, Toby Carvery. The classics are, for starters, I would recommend the I would recommend the breaded garlic mushrooms
Oh yes.
with like a job lot of mayo.
I don't think I've ever heard that as a unit of measurement with a condiment before. A job lot.
Um, and I used to think, like, actually in 2003 when I would go to Toby Carvery for special occasions, like my birthday, Mum would get garlic mushrooms, and I hated mushrooms like every kid does. But I remember
Yeah.
thinking, nobody actually liked these. Like, I remember thinking, why is she pretending? Like, they are too disgusting. But like, I would love to see probably Ashley Olsen, who was like the more prim and proper one, eating a breaded garlic mushroom. And sometimes you have to recommend eating it all in one as well, because if you bite in, like, the hot garlicky oil kind of
Of
spurts out.
course, yes.
And that's just not like Ashley Olsen's vibe. And I would love that. I would love that moment. I don't know what I'd get. I used to just get a big carvery, but now I'm vegetarian. I don't know. I guess
Well,
I'd
if you're
try.
back in 2003, would you have meat for just one dinner party, or
No, no.
so
Sorry,
you
that
would
I did say a joke there.
retrospectively be a vegetarian?
I think so. I do think it is. It's it's the best way to be, Connor. It's the right thing to do. Um, but no, I don't know. Like, I feel like that would actually have changed my diet a lot as a kid because it was probably mostly chicken.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I don't know. Maybe chicken helped me be the person that I am today. Yeah, but I think I'd recommend the carvery for all of them because it is the quintessential dish of Toby Carvery.
It is. When in Rome, eat Toby Carvery.
And then the drink.
Amazing.
So my favorite drink of all time is the espresso martini because it's sophisticated
Ooh.
and yet it's basically a vodka Red Bull. Like it's
I love that. It's a high class vodka Red Bull.
but it doesn't appear that Toby Carvery does that. So okay. Oh, Sartre used to apparently love apricot cocktails, and I feel like actually that's the whole vibe of everybody else on the list as well.
Yes, yeah.
Apricot cocktails for all.
I'm picturing, I mean, Paris Hilton would absolutely have a bottle of peach schnapps in her bag anyway.
Yep. Brittany Avril Lavigne sung about limoncello.
Oh my god, fruity cocktails for everyone. That might be the way in.
That's the way in.
Like, everybody have a few fruity cocktails and then discuss being condemned to be free. Although in Britney's case, of course, that's not the case, but that's a whole other thing that we simply don't have time to go into. Chelsea, this is a dinner party unlike any we have had on the series, and what a way to finish the first series of the dinner party. Thank you so, so much for taking the time to talk to us. If our wonderful listeners want to check out more of Chelsea Birkby, I've already said listen to the Jericho Comedy Podcast, episode 6, with wonderful Chelsea. But Chelsea, if we wanted to see more of your comedy, keep up with your funny thoughts, read your wonderful blog, how do we do that?
Thank you. You can go to www.chelseabirkby.com. It's a fantastic website.
It is genuinely, and I am not just saying it because you're here, it is the best website on the internet. It has to be seen to be believed.
Thank you. It's actually kind of based off of Britney Spears' website in around this era. So maybe I could look on
Oh.
that. And on there, it has the gigs I have coming up, which is not many in December, not many till it's like safe again. And the blog. The blog is on there too. And actually, Paris Hilton is the background for that blog. So
Well, then, doesn't that website tie all of this together nicely?
so there we go. And of course, I've bought my tickets to Oxfordshire Mind Comedy Gala at the North Wall in January. So I will see
Woo!
every one of you there.
That is so exciting. We will add links to all of those things, Chelsea's website, your Twitter account, and of course, the Northwall website where you can get your tickets for the Jericho Comedy Oxfordshire Mind Gala. Chelsea, it's such a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much for taking the time again, and I will see you soon.
Thank you so much and Merry Christmas, everybody.
Merry Christmas! Bye!
Bye.
Well, there we go. That was the dream dinner party of 2003, Chelsea Birkby. What a fascinating class of cultures with Sartre and Paris Hilton. I can't think of anyone better, though, to bring them together than Chelsea. We've added links into the episode description for you to visit Chelsea's genuinely amazing website, and we've got links to her Twitter and Instagram accounts too, so make sure you check those out. Chelsea also mentioned the Jericho Comedy Oxfordshire Mind Comedy Gala, which is taking place on January 16th at the beautiful North Wall in Oxford. Tickets are on sale now, and we've added a link into the episode description for that show. We've got some amazing acts coming along to support the incredible work that our friends do at Oxfordshire Mind. So do get those tickets. They make great Christmas presents. What a way to end the first series of the dinner party. This series has been such a pleasure to work on, and I really can't thank my wonderful guests enough for taking the time and giving their dream dinner parties all the thought that they did. I've learned so much and just had the most fun having these chats. If you've missed any of the brilliant episodes, you can listen back to the entire series now. With Christmas coming up, you might have a bit more free time, and this series is a great way to pass a few hours. If you have enjoyed the series, please consider sending a little bit of money over to support Oxfordshire Mind. Their work is so important, especially after the most challenging of years that we've had. So that would mean a lot if you would follow the donation link in the episode description. Thanks so much again for listening. The dinner party will be back in the new year, but until then, I hope you have a restful, joyful Christmas. Stay safe, eat and drink well, relax, be good to yourselves, keep an eye out for your friends and family, and I'll see you in 2021. But until then, thanks again and bye-bye.